Alright, so today I'm going to be showing you how you can stop making muddy looking portraits whenever you paint, because this is something that I really dealt with a lot and my colors were coming out the way how I didn't really want it to, and it made the portraits look bad when I really wanted it to look good at the end. So I came up with 3 different things that you should fix, and these 3 things are super simple, and after you do this, I guarantee you that your colors are going to look a lot cleaner, your portraits are going to look a lot nicer as well. So the first thing is your color mixing, and I've dealt with a lot of color mixing and I've learned a lot throughout the process, because there were times where I would mix a color on the palette and I'd make it like look really good and I'm really happy with the way how the color comes out, but after I pick up the paint on the palette and then I put it onto the canvas, it just looks nothing like what I mixed. Like I'd paint in like a super beautiful blue or like a super beautiful looking brown for a skin tone, and then when I put it onto the palette, it just, not the palette, when I put it onto the canvas, it looks gray. And the reason that is because the color mixing that I was using, even though it might look good on the palette, I wasn't using a good like base and good tones, like the proper way to mix the colors. So I came up with like 2 different set of palettes that really help the color come out good, and it's not gonna be just like palette that you see on, like a color that you see on your palette that looks really nice and then you try to paint it on and it's gonna look bad. Like these colors actually look good after you put them onto your portraits. As you can see over here, all of these portraits look really good because I found the proper way to make these skin tones. So you're gonna need these colors right here. So if you're at the store, you only need to buy burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, white, and you could also use ultramarine blue, magenta, and orange, but these aren't necessary. These are only gonna help you out. Like you could still make any skin tone with just these 4 over here. So if you're at the store, you don't know what to buy, get those. And don't just use paint straight out the tube. That's like you're cooking chicken without any seasoning. Like, what's something that you need to mix it in with something for it to be good? I don't know, like if you're making a cocktail or something, like you don't want to just drink the thing straight plain. Like you want to mix in some good stuff. You're going to start off with a base of burnt umber mixed with some white when you're creating this warm, vibrant palette for lighter skin, and that's going to be for your shadows that you see over here in the cheeks, and that's the darkest areas. So after you create that burnt umber mixed with the white, you're going to move on to creating burnt umber. You're going to mix some white in there and you're going to add some burnt sienna. And what the burnt sienna is going to do is going to make the skin tone look a little bit warmer and is going to stop it from looking like very dull. So add a little bit of burnt sienna, but not too much, because it's going to make it look like an orangish skin, and you don't really want that unless if you want to paint something orange. But you're going to add in some magenta at the end too, because the skin tone is a little bit pinkish over here, and that little bit of magenta makes that pinkish tone like when you see on like lighter skin people. And now you're gonna use that same color that you mixed and you're just gonna add in some white if you want to create like a lighter area, and you're gonna keep on adding white until you get to the lightest areas and when you're satisfied with what you have. So yeah, super simple, and then you can use that for lighter skin, and you can always tweak these colors based on like what you want, or like however you're painting, like the reference photo is looking. So now for a darker skin, you're going to use that same base of burnt umber. For all of these, you're going to use the base of burnt umber, but for the darker skin, you're going to use that base of burnt umber. You're going to add in some burnt sienna now for these midtones that you're going to make. So you're going to have burnt umber for those shadows. You're going to use burnt sienna for the midtones. Don't mix the burnt umber with the burnt sienna. I know that it sounded like I said that, but use burnt umber and then you're going to use straight burnt sienna for these midtones over here. And after that, you're going to add in some white to the burnt sienna to create that lighter tone before you move on to like the highlights on the face. And now for the highlights on the face, you're going to use burnt sienna. You're going to mix in some white, and you're also going to mix in some yellow ochre to create like a golden skin tone and create like a nice, like rich brown skin tone over here. And as I used in this face right here. And if you're wondering what I use for these like pure highlights, I just use straight white out the tube to create those like light reflections on my face. So yeah, after you do that, and now you want to create a cool looking palette for these portraits right here. And by the way, all these portraits over here, I show you how to create them. I have a free 7-step guide in the description down below. I definitely think that you should go check that out. It's super simple. I broke it all down over there. So go check that out if you want to learn exactly how I paint. And now for the cool palette, I use burnt umber. And then the next thing that you're going to move on to is you're going to add some white to that burnt umber for those transition phase before you move on to the midtones. And then after you do that, you're going to add in that burnt sienna to that same color to give it a little bit more of a lifelike look, give it that warmer tone instead of it being like completely dull. And you're going to add in some more white to it to give it like that lighter look. And you're going to add just some more white to it as you go along to create those lighter tones all the way until your point that you're satisfied at. And you're going to add in some pink touches at the end. Just like you can see over here, I just used a little bit of pink tones to give it a little bit more of like a flesh-like look with the pink. But yeah, now for the cool palette on the darker skin, you're gonna start off with burnt umber for the shadows, and you're gonna add in some burnt sienna to create those mid-tones. And then you're gonna start off with that same color and you're gonna add some white to it just to create those lighter tones. So yeah, I just broke it down there super quickly, but you can look at this or you can like take a screenshot of it. Just like remember this, and these are all the colors that you really need to mix to get like these different skin tones. So warm, vibrant palette for lighter skin, darker skin, and a cool palette for lighter skin and darker skin as well. So depending on what you want to make, you can use either the warm palette or the cool palette. So yeah, that's that. That's how you can mix the colors to get better looking like portraits, better looking skin tones, because you really need to focus on the colors that you're mixing. And please, 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 I beg to you, please don't use gray. Don't use gray for your shadows. You shouldn't be using gray anywhere in the photo unless if you're painting gray hair. I see some people paint gray for the shadows, and also like I see some pictures where I use gray in the shadows. Like, bro, that stuff kills me, because the picture, you're just making it look muddy whenever you add any sort of gray in there. And instead of that, just use some brown. It's gonna make a way better looking picture if you use brown instead of like a gray. I don't even think that there's a way how you can mix gray into like a brown or a tan skin tone and make it look clean. But yeah, that's exactly what I experienced when I was painting these two separate portraits, because I wanted to paint one where I was thinking in like my old mindset and using the same old techniques that I used to use. And I created another portrait where I was using those like new techniques that I learned in like the new way of thinking, like the way how you should be creating your portraits. And it came out way better. So if you want to get good looking portraits, you want to get good looking results, try the new method, try the Jordan method. I'm going to trademark that stuff at this point now. So, hey, who knows, once you start painting good looking portraits, people going to be asking you how you learned that. Little do they know that your voice spits some game to you. So yeah, just do that and you're gonna be good. Okay, and the next thing that I want to emphasize a lot is the way how you layer your colors matters so much, because I used to paint from like light to dark, and I would always like layer on top of colors that I already had down because I wanted to manipulate the way how it looked. And I thought that the more you layer on top of it, the more realistic and the more it would bend your way. Like, I wanted to just keep on adding more paint to the palette, but less is more whenever you're doing this. The more you add, the worse it's gonna be off. So you want to simplify it as much as you can. And I found a way that you can really simplify this process, because you're just digging a hole for yourself. The more paint you add onto the picture at the end, trying to think that is gonna help you out, is really not. So start off from your dark colors and then you start to move on to the lighter ones afterwards. So I start off with the shadows and like all the darkest areas, and then I move on to the midtones and then the whites last, in the good way of painting. But the bad way of painting that I used to make, I would start off with like the light tones, and then after that I say I'm gonna start painting like I don't know, like I start painting the details, and then I go into like the shadows, and I was just all over the place. I didn't really have that much structure, and that's a recipe for disaster, especially if you want to get good and you want to get fast as well. So yeah, this also creates another problem for you, because when you do paint on top of colors that you had laid down, the color that you paint on top of like a paint that you had before is going to end up mixing with that first layer. And you might think that if you let it dry completely and then you paint over it, is going to end up good. But trust me, it doesn't even matter if it's completely dry. If you paint one color on top of another color, you're still going to be able to see the color beneath it. So that's why I like to paint like fresh, and I make sure that the color that I'm using is like 100% what I want to put down, because I know that even if I try to tweak it or I try to manipulate it, it's not going to come out the way how I want it to be. So you want to make it perfect, like get that first color down, make it really good, and like use those colors that I showed you. And you can make any color that you want with those colors that I showed you. And this is gonna like remove that time that it takes for you to like clean up the picture and like try to fix things and like layer on top, and it just causes a whole bunch of stress, and it doesn't really work out that well. So when you move from dark to light, it gives you like a way cleaner structure, because you know what comes next, and you know like how you're gonna go throughout the picture, because you want to have it planned out. You don't want to just like improvise on the spot, because it's not really gonna give you what you want, and it's gonna take you a lot longer than it should. And you can clearly see through the results too, there's a clear difference in my old way of painting portraits and my new way. Like I save a lot of time, I save a lot of stress, and the picture ends up coming out better. So that's a triple win right there. I don't know who wouldn't take that triple win, but yeah, just like fix the way how you go about your process, and like take it seriously, because the way how you go about your process is gonna affect the way how the result comes out. Okay, so now the next thing that will help you get cleaner and better looking portraits is to just please clean your brush at this point. Just clean off your brush, make sure that you clean it off well. And I don't mean just wipe it down on a paper towel or leave it out in the water, especially when you're mixing different colors and you're like transitioning from one color to the next one, and you try to wipe off the brush, you're still gonna have residue of the old color on there, and it's gonna end up showing on the portrait. So save yourself 3 hours of stress and just take the 3 seconds that it takes to clean off your brush with some paint thinner. Use Gamsol. I have it right here just to remind me every single time that I'm using the colors to clean off my brush. So just leave it right there whenever you're painting, and just dip it in there whenever you're switching colors, and then wipe it onto your paper towel. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, this is it right here. This is paint thinner. It's called Gamsol. You can find this at your local art supply store. It's actually not that expensive. It's pretty cheap, and you can buy it anywhere. You can find it very easily. And they also have a stronger version of it. I think that is called Turpentine. That's like the stronger, more concentrated version of Gamsol. And that's the one that I think that it could burn your skin. So please be very careful when you're using this stuff. It's gonna take off the paint, because oil paint is very thick, is very like tough to clean off. So they have these things that are specifically made for doing that for you. But Gamsol, that's like the lighter version. You can spill that on you and you'll be completely fine as long as you wash your hands. But if you have some paint on your brush that's like 3-4 years old, I think that at that point you probably need to use some bleach, or you probably need to go to like a deep scrub. Like I don't even think that there will be a thing that can take off that paint on your brush from 3 years ago. So you probably need to buy a new brush at that point, and I think that'll be a better investment for you. But Yeah, just clean off your brush. Like, I know how this is. You can get lazy and you don't really see a point in cleaning your brush. You might just think that it's not that big of a deal, but it does add up over time and you will still have residue of paint on the brush, especially when you're trying to create a portrait. It comes out at the worst time, like when you're creating the lightest color, like you really need this to come out really nicely. You're always gonna have that smear of color that comes out and is gonna mess it up. So yeah, clean off your brush. If you need to, then use some bleach to clean off the brush. But after you do that, then you should be good. And you'll have a nicer looking portrait, especially with those like lighter skin tones that you make and those lighter colors, those whites, whenever you're painting, because that's like really important for those colors to come out very clean. So yeah, those are the things that helped me out with my portraits. And again, I want to invite you to check out that 7-step guide on painting portraits in the description down below, completely free. And I made it very simple for people to understand, very easy for you to digest, and is geared towards more beginners who don't really know where to start, or they don't really know like what process they should follow. So yeah, go check that out. Click the link in the description. And if you want to learn how to paint portraits faster, click the video on the screen right now, and I'll see you all over there. Peace.